Welcome, I'm Rose Martin, and this is Real Life with our favorite life coach, Susan Harf. And like you, I can't wait to hear what's on her mind today. Hey, Susan.
Hi, Rose. I'm happy to see you, and I'm so glad that you decided to join us as well. Okay, today we're talking about hoarding.
Oh, well, I will come right out and tell you I am a collector.
Yep, that's different.
Okay.
You know,
Of a lot of different things, but I'm a collector.
well, we're going to get into that in a moment because we want to know what she's talking about.
Okay.
The thing is that I find people use mental health terms all the time that shouldn't really be attributed to who they are, what they are.
So mental health, hoarding is actually a mental health term.
Hoarding is a mental health disorder, and it's not the same thing as clutter. So they are, however, on the same spectrum. So in other words, there is a line, and clutter is somewhere on that line, and hoarding is a mental health dysfunction that is the extreme end of that line.
Where does a collector fall in?
A collector is someone who likes to collect things and is able to categorize, organize, put them in places that they belong. Those things don't take over their environment and their total space.
But I think of clutter as just being messy.
It is.
Having lots of different stuff that you haven't found a home for it, so it just is laying around.
It is. And so all of these terms get used interchangeably when in fact they shouldn't. So if you are a collector, I know many collectors, usually collectors collect one or two or three things. They collect yadros, they collect clothing, they collect art. Shoes. Now I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to tell you right now, if it has anything to do with shoes, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm a collector.
Because Rose is a collector. Rose is a collector of shoes.
As well as you are. Yeah.
I am too. Okay, but the thing is that when you have things orderly, when they're in the right place, right meaning where they belong, you don't have. Let's say you're a collector of shoes. You don't have the shoes in the sink. You don't have the shoes in the bathtub. So we're talking about the difference between extremism and not. So let's just talk first of all about hoarding, and then we'll talk about collecting, and we'll talk about clutter. Hoarding is a situation where it's taken over your life. You are obsessively buying, obsessively shopping when it doesn't make sense, and what you're buying doesn't make sense. So you are buying multiples. You already have 20 bags that if you were to give a gift, you have those bags, but now you're buying and now have 1,000 more. You have a hammer in the house, but now you're buying tools excessively to the point where you have your tools in the toolbox, you have your tools all over the closet, you have your tools in 5 more closets. You are hoarding paper, thinking, well, if I get a phone call and I need to write down something, I need that. But instead of having a pad or 2 or even 5 pads, you have a room full of paper, and you have to weave it into a walk space because you can't walk in your environment. If you've ever been in the environment of a hoarder, you know it. You know the difference.
So is the difference whether you keep it or whether you like recycle it and give some of them away and then get some new things, or is it that no matter what you get, you hold on to it because for some reason you think you might need it, like paper or something, and so you don't ever want to be without it?
Hoarding is a situation where there's no rationale to the purchase. It's multiples of most everything. It's taking over your environment. And sometimes it brings you to social isolation because you don't want to bring anybody to your space. You don't want to bring anybody to your home because you're embarrassed.
So when you say taking over your environment, does that mean like you can't sit on your couch because
Correct.
There's stuff in your couch? And you had mentioned about the bathtub. So you've got stuff in your bathtub so you can't take a bath.
Correct.
That's what you're talking about.
It often becomes a very unhygienic place because it becomes dirty, it becomes unkempt. You can't, oftentimes you can't bathe because the bathroom is full of stuff. You can't provide a safe environment for your food because your refrigerator is completely full beyond full. You can't find anything in it. There are things in there that should have been thrown out months ago. You don't want to get rid of it. That's the other aspect of this. You have a very hard time getting rid of things or categorizing anything or organizing anything. Sometimes procrastination is part of this as well. But in terms of visually, how does this look? It literally is a situation where you can't walk. You have to carve out a tiny path between the kitchen and the living room and the bedroom, because if you didn't carve out a path, you wouldn't be able to walk there. There are things all over the floor. There are things all over every counter, every space that you would put something on. It's things upon things upon things.
I'm curious, does that come from maybe living in poverty early on, or having a desire that you went without, that you want to try to make sure you have it? I heard about people after the Depression would collect like dozens of, butter containers or shopping bags or anything just in case.
Yes.
Is it born out of that, or are there other reasons that people either are extreme collectors or move into the spectrum of hoarding?
Both. So hoarding usually starts to exhibit itself in the teens and early adulthood. I want to say that 2 to 6% of the global population falls into the category of mental health category of being a hoarder. So this is when it comes about in the late teens or early adulthood. Usually that's when we start to exhibit that kind of behavior. And there are some markers. So one of them, it could be early trauma. So the trauma could have occurred in your childhood, and then as an adult you become a hoarder. Also, one of the markers is when you have other mental health issues, such as OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, ADD, hyperactivity that comes along sometimes with ADD. I want to say perfectionism, which is not a mental health disorder, but perfectionism also sometimes comes along with hoarding. Procrastination is often something that we see with hoarders. I'm going to get to it. I'm going to try and deal with this. But it becomes so overwhelming because it's taken over your life.
But sometimes the people know exactly what they have. So they might say, I bought, 24 of these, but yet don't touch them because I know I have 24 of them, or I know where this is, even though it might be in disarray to someone else. They know where their stuff is.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, so are there degrees of hoarding too, to where then it becomes the dirty squalor type things from the basic, just I'm buying things that I don't need and collecting them even if I don't take price tags off, just storing them?
Good question. I think it's the way to look at this is hoarding is an extreme, and it doesn't it's a gradual progression of things, but it's not a the aspects of hoarding don't occur gradually. So in other words, if you are a hoarder, you didn't all of a sudden start shopping for multiples. If you're a hoarder, it didn't all of a sudden become impossible to be in the space. These things all go along with each other. And sometimes, and we can talk about in a minute what the hoarder gets from being a hoarder, because there are some psychological comforts that people get when they are. But what is gradual is clutter can become a problem. The difference between the hoarder and the person who lives with clutter is that when someone lives in clutter and they're not a hoarder, they're living with clutter but they don't like it and they recognize they have a problem. I don't want my space to look like this. I want to have people over. Or that's the impetus. I'm having company. Yeah. They don't shy away from having company. They say, I'm having company, and so I'm going to make this place tidy.
Or we've got to clean the garage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that too is my impression of somebody who has clutter versus a hoarder. The garage might be a mess. The basement might be the catch-all. But you don't live your life that way. So hoarding becomes a way of life, unfortunately. It becomes a way to social isolate. It becomes a way to not be in touch with people because you don't want them to see where you live. It also is a situation where you don't know you have a problem. You explain it away. Well, I couldn't get to it, or
I don't have enough space.
I don't have enough space.
room.
My space is too small. If I had a bigger space, it wouldn't be this way. But in fact, the hoarder, no matter how much space they have, they fill up the space with stuff.
Or I need to go get one of those units, right? I need to go get a separate unit to put more stuff in. So
they
I'm
do, and they
curious.
do.
Yeah, I'm curious. You said hoarders get some kind of psychological benefit from this. What's
Yes.
that?
Well, one of the things that happens is for some people it feels like a sense of control. Because not only are they hoarding, but usually the things have to be right there in front of them. So, I mean, that gets out of hand because now the whole house looks like this, but like what we're describing. But when they're in bed, they need to be able to touch the things that bring them comfort. When they're in the kitchen, they need to be able, and they get very frustrated when they can't find something. So having it close to you is an issue. That's part of the issue. Sometimes I've seen people who are hoarders have a lot of animals. I knew a woman who I actually went to her home. I don't regularly go to people's houses to do, when I was doing therapy with her, I don't normally do that, but I had to go there because she was not able to come to me, and it was a situation of safety. It was an issue of safety at that point. And I went there and saw that she had like 10 cats. And these cats were all over the place. The food was all over the place. The feces was all over the place. It was scary. It was very unclean. We were very worried for her that she was going to get sick. And that also is, so there's the issue of a sense of control. There's also sometimes a sense of security for people.
But in her case, did you feel a loss of control because everything was out of control with how she was feeding the cats or how she was taking care of them? And
no, she didn't feel a loss of control by that. She felt a loss of control if she were to leave that environment.
Oh, okay.
So that environment made her feel a sense of, and in fact, that's the delusion that people tell themselves when they don't believe they have a problem. And that's clearly part of the symptoms, that if you say, oh, I got to clean up this place is a mess, you're likely not a hoarder. If you say, I don't have a problem with this, I know where everything is, like you said before, that's possible. I know where everything is. This is the room where my bags are. This is the room where my paper is. The other thing is the hoarding takes on an irrational sense because you're hoarding things that you absolutely don't need. You do not need 9,000 pieces of paper to write on if somebody calls you and wants you to jot something down.
Or every grocery bag you've ever gotten, or container.
Right. So one of the things is a sense of control and a sense of security. Another thing that happens with people who are hoarding is that they have fears. They have fears of, let's say one of the things that they hoard are photographs. It could be a fear of forgetting those people. Let's say those people are no longer alive. They want the photographs right there so they can see them and pretending that they're with them. So some of this takes on an irrational part and other times delusion.
So for instance, with the photographs, would a hoarder be keeping every single photograph even if they didn't know the people who were in them?
Maybe.
Oh.
Maybe.
So what do you do as a family member then? If you notice there's someone in your family, or before we get to what you could do for yourself, what do you do if you notice this with your sister or your aunt or your neighbor?
I think it takes an intervention, and oftentimes the intervention occurs not just with one person, but with many people who know you. So, because with one person, they can, depending on how strong of an individual that person is going to provide the intervention. If they go by themselves, the hoarder might be somebody who can talk you out of it. they can say, you think this is hoarding because you're a minimalist, but I'm not a minimalist. I like to have a lot of things. I like to have a lot of statues. I like to have a lot of little trinkets. I like to remember where I've been. These are all things from my travels. I like to have, a lot of these things. Those snowball things.
Yeah.
What were those? I don't even know what those are called.
The
snow globes.
Yeah.
I like, I collect those. Okay, but if those are all over every single counter that you have, on top of the TV, on top of your bed, on top of your carpeting,
in the bathtub,
yeah. Well, then no, that's no longer reminding you of Niagara Falls.
And you're no longer just a collector.
Exactly.
And so the thing you shouldn't do, though, would be to go in when they're not home and clean out their house.
Absolutely not. And that's something that we need to address, is that there is a strong sense of fear with hoarders. There is a terror sometimes of getting rid of things. That's part of the hoarding, is they not only don't want to get rid of things, they don't know how to get rid of things. And so if you were to come over and when they weren't home, and this is what some people have done, is hire a garbage collecting service, and they came up and they just literally tore everything out of the house. That will send somebody into a terrible, terrible, sometimes a psychotic break.
And even though you think you might be doing it out of love, to say, I'm really going to
You are
help, I'm going to help you clean up, I'm going to bring some people in here, we're going to get a big dumpster, you're going to feel so much better when it's neat and clean. That's
Exactly.
the wrong thing to do.
Exactly, it's the wrong thing to do. It has to be a conversation that's a beginning.
Then do they look at every single piece? I mean, are you thinking that they need to actually touch and say goodbye, or let it go, or keep it?
I think what they need is therapy. Let's
Okay.
start with that. I think they need therapy, and I think they need help in finding out. I know this was true for my client. Needed help finding out why they felt the need to be a hoarder, why they felt a need to, and we didn't use that word with her. Now her family, when they had the intervention, they said, you're hoarding, you are a hoarder. And she said, no, I'm not. So it got nowhere. And when she agreed to therapy, we started talking about some of the things that occurred, and there was trauma in the childhood. And there were all kinds of things that she was substituting for love. She was substituting things for love. She was substituting hoarding for control.
Or for loss,
And
I
for
guess.
loss.
Yeah.
And so all of this is wrapped up in that. Now, so I think the first step is therapy, and I think it does help to figure out where the trauma was and where it began. And I want to talk about clutter, because I think clutter is akin to hoarding, but it's not hoarding. You know that your place is untidy. You know you have to clean it. You do clean it. You may procrastinate for a while, or sometimes people have no motivation to clean up because they live by themselves. No one's going to come over. They really don't see a need to make their bed or clean up or really do any of that. But the person who lives with clutter does understand this could become unsafe, and I don't want to live in an unsafe environment. So even though they may be somebody who wants a lot of things around, or who likes collecting, or whenever they go anywhere they buy something, or I know people who I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this past weekend in Cleveland, and some
My
people,
hometown, that's
your
great.
hometown, and I love Cleveland too. And some people, they did not leave the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame until they bought a T-shirt. They wanted to have a T-shirt that says they were there. I don't happen to have that need, but some people do. So we're all different. And so some people like to have a lot of things in their home, or like to have a lot of T-shirts, or whatever. That's not the problem. The problem is it's not if it's taking over your life. So in the clutter situation, it's not necessarily taking over their life, but it may take over for a period of time. And then they need to have the motivation to change that. They need to say, okay, wait a minute, this place is getting out of hand. I don't like how it looks. And I do want to bring people over. So or even if I don't, I want to live in a healthy place. I am going to make sure that this doesn't get out of hand. So that is something that the clutterer does, the person who lives with clutter, that the hoarder does not do. And it's important, especially if you live alone, to make sure that you check in with yourself. Is this getting out of hand? Some people don't really take pride in their home. The home is somewhere they go to in between their life. They don't really care. They you know, you and I are both people who are not that way. We love our homes. We love our homes to look a certain way. We've spent time decorating our homes. Our home is part of our identity. For some people, it's not. Their identity is the trips they take, the job they have, the roles they have in life. That's fine. So if they don't have the motivation to have it look nice, then at least they have the motivation to have it healthy and to have it be safe and to have an environment that they can control.
I wonder about family members who, let's say someone passes away and you're left with all of their stuff.
That's
and
right.
You feel like, I don't know what I should do with this now. So maybe you get rid of some of it, maybe you bring some of it home, and then you've got it there, so you just don't know what to do with it.
And many people are in that situation. I'm glad you brought that up, because many people feel that way. And you know, I say to them, unfortunately, first of all, your first idea is give it to relatives. You go through the kids, you say, who wants this? And then eventually you get to a point where you still have stuff. And that's the time when you need to have the fortitude to say, I am going to give this away, or I am going to throw it away. So in other words, I'm of the opinion that there's not much that you can't give to people who need it. When we moved, we gave our entire household pretty much to the Veterans Administration. I took a lot of pleasure in that. You know, we've been giving things to organizations our whole lives, so that was not new to me. But sometimes it's very tough to get rid of the children's artwork that they don't want,
Yeah.
the yearbooks that they don't want, the trophies that they may not want. It's hard to keep all of your parents' stuff that you may not have room for. And that's why I think giving to a worthy cause makes a lot of sense. For us, that's what we did. We gave it, but we kept things for sentimental value as well. But most of what I keep is also usable. That's my rule. And I think we're talking about what's rational, what's irrational, what's appropriate, what makes no sense. I want to spend a minute talking about Marie Kondo. Marie Kondo wrote a book about this subject.
Yeah. It brings you joy or not.
And
Yeah.
her theory is, if you are somebody who's a collector, but you have too much, like let's say clothing, because I think a lot of people that I know can relate to that. She advises, let's say you have 15 black shirts, and you don't need 15 black shirts, and you don't have room for 15 black shirts. Okay, if those are the parameters, you take one of the shirts in your hand and you say, does this bring me joy? And again, you don't think a lot about it. You don't go through a whole soliloquy with yourself. You just say, quickly, does this bring me joy? Is this the first one I'd choose when I need a black shirt? No. Okay, it's going over there. Next one, does this bring me joy? And you do that for each thing. And the things that you're going to discard, you say to yourself or to the thing, she advises, this is not me speaking, this is Marie Kondo, she says, thank that piece of clothing for what it did for you. So thank you for being there for me in my 20s. You no longer fit me. I'm not going to keep you. And that's her conversation.
Sometimes I just would like to get a big plastic tub instead and say, you know, out of these shirts, these are for another season, and I might want this to wear this again a little bit later. So, yet on my sister, she is a giant pass-through. My youngest sister is like in and out, in and out, in and out. So even in one single family, like,
you can have different
you'd have her as a total pass-through, and my mom would be like, I don't know if she still has it or not, actually, because your sister gives it all away. And me, I would be tempted to like, I don't know yet. I think I want to save that. Some things are really easy, and then some things you're like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, the goal is to have an environment that works for you, to know what's in your environment. If that is a clue, if you don't know how many of this thing you have, then that is a clue that you may have too much.
Or if it's taking up space, prime space that you could allot to things that really enrich your life and things you really love to do, then that's another reason.
And that's really what we're talking about is I'm not saying we have any issue, there's no mental health issue with being a collector. I'm saying,
Thank you very much.
I'm saying, I'm saying, I want to be able to go home and talk to Rose.
Yeah.
The reason that it becomes a problem is if it is taking over your space, it is not logical, it makes no rational sense, or in the case of the hoarder, it's unsafe. But even we're saying now, we're talking about the collector. Even if you're a collector and not a hoarder, and things are neat, fairly neat, if you have 50 of the same thing, you don't need 50 pairs of black shoes. You don't need 50 black, shirts. I mean, you can tell me as a woman that you need a low cut one, a high cut one, a square. I get that. But you don't need, of the same exact thing.
So I'll take it this far. You don't need 50 black turtlenecks.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
But everything else, it's negotiable.
As long as you're safe, Rose.
Okay.
And as long as it's clean and healthy.
Sure. And what do we do? Let's say you're beginning to think to yourself, there's someone in my family or me myself, I've got too many and I'm starting to worry, or I'm starting to think to myself, this is going down a road that's maybe not as healthy as could be.
Well, the first thing is you clean it. You attempt to clean it up. The problem occurs if you can't, or you won't. And then it's time to call somebody else and say, I need help with this.
Okay.
I need help because it's not happening and I want it to.
And I think there can be discord a lot of times in families. Susan, this is an absolutely fantastic topic, and we could have several shows about this.
Yes, we could.
So let's hit it again, okay?
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Rose Martin for Real Life and Susan Harf. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.